what seems yesterday when you're on a book tour, but it was about 2 months ago. And we had a great evening that evening, so I look forward to hopefully engaging exchange after I give you a few opening thoughts. After watching our lawsuit, after the exposure of being in Washington during the impeachment proceeding, after writing Worse Than Watergate and seeing the way this presidency had been structured, the way the House had been structured, I didn't know at the time the term authoritarian or authoritarianism, but I quickly was discovering it because I couldn't help but ignore the way these things existed. And I found a body of knowledge that I was totally unaware of. And I'm going to end on this note, and then we can open this up for Q&A. I found studies that really commenced in the aftermath of World War II. They were social scientists who were quite concerned as to whether what had happened in Italy and Germany during World War II, or leading up to it, could happen in the United States. The short answer they found was yes. Their early research, however, was somewhat flawed. It's never been refuted. Never been refuted. And this was a group up at Berkeley that they arranged their title of their work, they called it The Authoritarian Personality. And it was done by a man by the name of Adorno et al. There were several of them. And he is the one who actually wasn't the most involved, but he's the one who, when people turn to it, refer to him. That material very quickly was superseded, but a lot of people are unaware of what happened after the Adorno study was criticized because it was based to a great extent on Freudian psychology, which has always been debatable. But others, suspecting there might be something here, even in criticizing what was going on with this type of analysis, decided to see if they could determine just through empirical evidence whether indeed there was such a personality. And they spent about the first 40 years of their work looking at authoritarian followers. They call them right-wing authoritarian followers. And they're people who submit very easily to authorities. They're people who then become very aggressive in pursuing the policies or wishes of that authority figure, or authority, whatever that authority might be, whether it be political, religious, and often there is a merging of the two. And they're also very conventional in their lifestyle. But I also found, and indeed include, a lot of other traits that these people reveal, and these revelations come not because social scientists tag them with it, but because through the testing themselves, they admit this is their nature, their way they see the world. And they are often highly religious. They're often mean-spirited. They're often bullies. They're often have a lot of very unattractive traits. They're highly self-righteous. They're not self-critical at all. Once they latch on to their beliefs, by golly, they got them. And they don't want them questioned, and they don't want to doubt themselves. The people who fall into this follower category, and of course, the bulk of people are followers. The leaders are few and far between, but let me just finish up with the followers. Once they latch on, their self-righteousness lets them proceed in a way that, in their aggression, that they can barely hold a civil conversation with somebody if somebody challenges their beliefs. And they can get, this explains an awful lot of what you see. The other thing that consistently happens, and the higher they test on these tests, these authoritarian scales, the more conservative they are. And they all say, we are Republicans. Then the other side of this study was they discovered really in the last 10 years, and this has been a more intensified look at the other side, the leaders. This is about as academic as I get, because I found this body of information. I literally had to buy a copy of The Idiot's Guide to Statistics to refresh my recollection so I could explain this to others without having to have great charts and tables and all the things that are wonderful about statistics, but pretty dull unless you're a social scientist into this. And they write for each other. They write for peers. They never have shared this information publicly. But when I got to the leaders, they call them social dominators. They're people both men and women are followers. Leaders tend to be male. There are exceptions. I'll tell you one that the man who led me through a lot of this is a fellow by the name of Bob Altmaier, who I just happened to get to at the right time. He's an American. He got his PhD at Yale, and he went up to Canada. He married a Canadian, and he got very good research grants up there. And he was one of the real movers and shakers, and his work has been corroborated and confirmed by countless other social scientists the world around. So he's one of I just was very lucky to get probably the leading authority who's got the largest database. And I was asked to do a program with Ann Coulter. And so I sent an email to Bob Altmaier. I said, would you call her a leader or a follower? And there's another type where people who are social dominators as well as right-wing authoritarians, and they score high uniquely on both tests, and which seems inconsistent. How can you be a leader and follower? Well, what explains that, and when they analyzed it, is those who score high on both tests, and they call them double highs, the reason that happens is the dominator sees himself as leading the world when he is taking the test as a follower. So he scores high on it because he can only envision the world. The dominators are, as I say, male. They're dominating in their personality and disposition. They have absolutely no interest in equality. They see only themselves as superior to anybody else. They don't believe in equality. And finally, these are just the defining traits that are used to make sure that a person scores in these levels. They do the initial testing. The other thing is they all test as being amoral. They will do what is ever necessary to succeed in their effort to manipulate or control and run the events the way they want to. But anyway, when I called Altmaier about Ann Coulter, I said, what is she? And he said, I think she might be a double high. And I've been trying to explore, which is the next phase of this thing, just for my own edification, why people are double highs. And there have been a lot of studies about testosterone levels. I'll just leave that thought there. So what the core of this book is I first tried to understand conservatism because I found conservatives themselves did not understand conservatism. I'm somebody who's well read in the canon. I hopefully, in a brisk fashion, show how difficult even the best-known conservatives have in explaining conservatism. But yet definitions do emerge, and it really clearly is an attitude that seeks to preserve what's good. I always thought that Senator Goldwater's definition was as good as any, where he thinks conservatism is drawing on the wisdom of the past and applying it to the present. I still consider myself a Goldwater conservative on many issues, which places me well left of center today. And I'm sure the senator would be there too. And it's not, I haven't changed my views, but the party and conservatism has moved so far to the right. And so what's wrong with authoritarianism? Well, it might be all right for a police force. It's certainly appropriate in the military, but it poses a lot of problems in a democracy and leading a country because it's clearly proto-fascist behavior. Now, I next looked to make sure that we're not on the road to fascism. We're not. But we're very close to it. And I can't tell you how many experts told me, John, and they sort of repeated this, what I'm going to tell you, in different ways. They said, John, it could happen here, and when it happens here, fascism is going to come with a smile on its face. And we're going to willingly give up rights and liberties as we think that this smiling face is protecting us, because this is what draws people in to follow authoritarian figures. They feel safe. Even the ambiguities of simple life can cause a lot of people to become authoritarian followers. So it's with that thought, that troubling thought, that we are someday going to have another 9/11, that I thought somebody had to get this word up and out and into the public debate, because there's no question it exists on the right. It does not exist, incidentally, because of the testing on the left. This may explain why Democrats are so hard to get together, because they're like herding cats, which is both good and bad. It doesn't help winning elections when you can't get everybody to march in lockstep, but it certainly does help in solving problems, whereas some of these people, this hardcore, I'm told, is about 23 to 25%, and many more people leaning that way, but not the solid core. On the left, you maybe have 10 or 12% today on the far left. So, these two sides are somewhat calling the public debate. And most people fall in that great bell curve middle, and that's where this country has always survived and done well, is by going down the middle. So that's why I wrote this book, to hopefully get us back down the middle. Now I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.